Hello and welcome to the Reddit 2chan 5-module launch Duna challenge. And yes, it's late. This is the one that Matt Lone, I watched him do the live stream and he done a video about it, but I thought I'd have my go at it. However, I was a bit late doing it. You know where it happened. Life gets in the way. Anyway, here we are launching app, the first module. As per the challenge, if you're not familiar with it, on Reddit you get a weekly challenge. And I think this time it's liquid fuel. Get into orbit of Kerbal with just liquid fuel, no oxidizer, and I believe the hard mode is to go to Duna. So in this challenge that I'm doing though, we had to go to Duna. You were only allowed to launch 5 modules up, and each module had to be 2 tons or less. Of hard mode, you had to launch these modules, dock them together, or build your spacecraft, but you were not allowed to refuel it. So there's no refueling after launching them up and docking them together. Which I suppose isn't too hard, but you could think that you can launch empty tanks up with and have, 2 tons modules. I'm not sure that breaks the challenge. Anyway, first problem I have. Something went completely wrong when I tried to switch to the other vessel. Everything went haywire. My space station that was in orbit went to super velocity speeds. Perhaps they thought they meant send the space station to Duna. I found that the range extender mod was the problem to that, and I'm not sure if you need BD Armory to work with that or something that stabilizes. But yes, I didn't realize that mod had caused that problem before, because I'm sure I've had that same problem with other versions of KSP. Anyway, I'm not sure if you caught it. Yeah, here we are, switched that craft again. It was 2 tons, it was just 1,900 odd tons. And here is the second module. Quick launch, quick sequence of revealing the module. This is called the Kerbal Hot Pants Return module. In other words, it makes sure that the Kerbal survives re-entry of Kerbal after many years of, going to Duna and back. I'm not sure if in the 2 tons you had to include the snacks. Anyway, first off, coming to trying to dock, I was trying to rush it up because I had to go and do something else as well. And as you can see, I nudged the module into a rotational spin. Yeah, rotation is spinning. Anyway, I was able to dock with it, so there's some clever use of the SAS, and then undock. As you can see, we're under 4 tons, which 2 modules under 4 tons, that's correct. We are within the mission parameters, which is cool. Anyway, next thing to do now is deorbit this piece of junk and then launch the next module up. Might as well tell you what they are. The next 2 modules will be fuel. That is the one big problem with space travel, is carrying enough fuel. If we were able to reduce the amount of fuel you need, that means the amount of thrust that you need to launch a vehicle up into space will be a lot less, and also it means that further you can go into space. Anyway, here we go, quick docking, 2 fuel tanks, undock, come on, deorbit this thing, and then check the weight of the modules themselves, which were just under 6 tons. Okay, so now the next launch, which is another fuel tank, or 2 fuel tanks, and perhaps I can talk a bit more about the Reddit challenge. Now, in the Reddit challenge you have normal mode, which is the challenge, say like this, 5 modules, 2 tons or less, you can refuel if you want, and then send it to Duna land and return your Kerbal to Kerbal. And I think you have hard mode, and then you have super hard mode. Now the hard mode is, for this challenge, is that you cannot refuel, you cannot transfer fuel between any of the modules, you cannot transfer fuel from another module that you launch into orbit to refuel your ship. And there is also another mode, super hard mode, which is, well, basically they say impress me. So basically it's going to be hard mode plus something else. And I plan to do something else in this challenge. Now, I wasn't originally, I was just going to build the 5 module, send them, land them. But I realized this challenge is going to be late loading up to the YouTubes, so why not add the extra hard mode? Now, it took me a bit of thinking what I could do. I thought about landing on Ike. I've seen that Matt Lone had done that, so by that, I'm not going to copy him. I have to think of something else. I thought of things like, perhaps I'll pass by the man and perhaps fly through one of the arches, or something silly like that. But I thought, no, that would need to be something a bit more precise. So here's my plan. I'm going to do a flyby of Eve on my return trip to Kerbal. Now that is not an easy feat, well, it's easy enough, it's just that it takes a lot of time just to work out the maneuver nodes. Like, trying to work out the maneuver nodes to another planet is bad enough as it is, especially if you're not using Kerbal tools. I'm thinking, yeah, it's called MechJeb. I use MechJeb a lot to plan my interplanetary transfers just because I know how to do it. And yeah, okay, and also note that you see on this craft, I've got the little dutty probe engines on this thing. I forgot what they're called, but it takes 2 burns, so 2 orbits, to get this on the way to Duna. Now I could have used a more thrust weight ratio friendly engine, but I decided we'll go for more efficiency. With this engine, I have a lot more delta V with regards to the weight, and also I don't think it was against the challenging rules, but I was ditching some of the tanks on the way. Does that class as staging? Is it supposed to be no staging? But that's undocking and redocking. I don't think that's cheating, because it didn't say that you had to keep the modules after you attached them to the ship. Anyway, now we're on our way to Duna, a quick fine-tuning of our orbit. And by the way, for those of you who are not familiar with transferring to another planet, get your encounter first. Burn from Duna first, or Kerbal, or wherever you're going from or to. And then once you're on your interplanetary voyage, set up a maneuver node, sort of like quarter of the way there. I do it quarter of the way, you could do it a bit more or less, it depends on you. It's your ship, you fly it. But then what you can do is fine-tune your approach to the planet without having to have a lot of problems with, say, like switching SOIs, sphere of influence. Yes, that's right. When you change the sphere of influence of the planet, sometimes KSP gets a bit buggy, and then all the complex calculations that the game does to calculate your orbit gets a bit messed up, and then your orbit is either too far away and you're going to slingshot past the planet without any hope of ever getting back into orbit, or you're going to crash into the planet, which is normally the case for me. Anyway, by here you can see I'm doing an aerobraking. I'm not sure if the spin in the craft helps. I know it distributes the heat around the craft, but I'm wondering if it also helps in increasing the drag when the craft is going sideways, and then therefore reducing the amount of orbit. Now I found that wasn't going to be enough, so I had to burn the engine to get us into orbit. Luckily, I worked out we had just enough. We should actually have enough to get into orbit around Duna without having to do aerobraking, but I thought it was best to do the aerobraking because we want to do the hard mode. We want to go and pass Eve on the way to Kerbal. And I'm not sure if that's because we're going to, nip to Eve, pick up a few science snacks, and then head our way back to Kerbal. Anyway, you can see here we're doing another aerobraking. This time I raised the periapsis and the reason for that is because I've done experiments originally to get aero capture, and I found that my initial thoughts of going about 10 kilometers because Duna atmosphere is very thin, so aerobraking is much harder than another planet like Duna or Eve, which is much easier, except you have more potential exploding on Kerbal or Eve because of the amount of heat generated. So at 10 kilometers we crashed into Duna. Anyway, unveiling my awesome Duna lander, you probably saw that I had the strut over the top of it. I used one of the decouplers, which decouples on both ends. There's a good reason behind that, because if you used the other decouplers, which keeps attached to one side of the structure or probe or whatever, then it seemed to have problems that it wouldn't release, that it would destroy the chair. But if you beat the decoupler just over the top of the chair and put the strut over the top of that, the chair would then expel the decoupler without any problems of the strut exploding and destroying the probe. Anyway, here we're doing some more spinning because why not? I'm not sure, I don't think we'll get any re-entry effects from here because the drag of this was quite high, so we're slowing down quite a lot before we're reaching the ground. Looking at this landing, perhaps I should have planned it a bit better because I didn't decide to land on the highest point at Duna, which would mean it'd take a lot less fuel for us to actually getting back into orbit. I'm not sure if it would mean that we have used more fuel to land. I haven't looked into things like that. By the way, I have to look at launching because I realised doing a test on this for this mission, because I built the lander as the first thing, because first thing you need to know is how am I going to launch from Duna and then return. A return craft isn't too bad. Once you're in space, it's easy enough. But I needed to work out how to build a 2-ton lander, which would land on Duna and return back up into orbit at least. So here we are, coming in for a landing. This just has enough fuel for launching back up into orbit. And Gus Gurman, he's made it. He's going to plant his flag. But what I was on about just now was I have to look at best way and the most efficient way to get into orbit of any planet. Mainly Kerbal, because, well, you always launch from Kerbal. It's your point for launching onto any mission. Anyway, launching from here, as you can see, we're pointing the wrong direction from the start, which was not good of you, Cuz. And I'm not sure if this launch profile was good enough. I did realize, though, that launching, if I turned over too quickly, we would lose control, probably because of the flat top of this. If I used a command pod, it probably would be a bit more aerodynamic. Even if I use the flat top one, the SAS, the module, the reaction wheels, that's it, that's what I was looking for. The reaction wheels be a bit more powerful than the control probe that I've got here, making sure that we don't flip out while launching. Mind you, the Duna's atmosphere is so thin that we were able to do this as long as we didn't turn over too quickly. So that was fine. Okay, so, yep, we're getting into orbit. Final burn, 497 meters per second, and we got 679. We have 200 meters per second spare, which we require to get to the craft. Anyway, we've actually got and done the Duna landing part of this mission on just a 2-ton lander, which was transported on modules which weighed 7 tons or 10 tons altogether, less than 10-ton ship. That's including the lander. Oh, and look, we've got a return of the Kerbal stock music. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you guys are getting bored of the music that I'm using. I certainly can't find much more. Well, it probably could if I looked a bit better, but looking on, was it SoundCloud, which I'm using, and having problems finding good tunes, ones that I like, that I think you guys might like, perhaps a bit more spacey tunes. I used some epic music which sort of had copyright things on it, but luckily on the music video I used it on, they are sharing the revenue with that, which I don't mind anyway, because I don't make much from these anyway. But, you know, you're always annoyed if you make a video, you use some music, and then someone claims the copyright of the music, and they get all that money from your video, because it's not completely all their content. Especially if you're commentating on it, which I didn't on the last one, so I don't mind too much. Anyway, we set up our course towards Eve. That was quite easy enough. Right, the problem here is I had to set up 3 maneuver nodes to get our encounter with Kerbal. Checking the delta V required for each node. And we are in budget. Barely, but we're in budget. Now if we decouple this, it would reduce our delta V, but as I found out, it also alter our trajectory, making all the maneuver nodes that I had just planned null and void. So I had to redo them. They take about 20 minutes to plan all that hard work down the drain. Yeah, that took me twice to do actually. I did do quick saves of it, so I could have gone back and used the quick save without undocking the probes, but that was rather annoying. Okay, and see as well, after redoing it, it took a lot less delta V as well to do it. So I was quite thrilled that I had to redo it. Not really, but you get my meaning. If you find a more efficient way, you think, great. I think you think, great. I'm trying to think of something to say because I'm running out of things to say. Anyway, we're saying bye to Eve. Hard mode, or super mode, achieved. We've already done hard mode. All we have to do now is return to Kerbal safely. And a question for you. What do you find is the safest re-entry of Kerbal's atmosphere before you cause problems, burning up or explosions from your heat shields? I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, or perhaps some clever ways of returning to Kerbal without having to get back into orbit. Anyway, another hidden command seat within the struts. Get gas current sitting down. What's our return altitude? 38 kilometers. But will this be too low? Yeah, I'm always nervous about this. I thought perhaps a bit lower, but before I've done 20 kilometers from interplanetary space, and then the heat shield would overheat. The Kerbal will probably overheat. So I'm trying a safe 38 for this one. Oh yes, and if you use a command seat, make sure that you use the probe or something else to control from here. Otherwise your SES will point you in the wrong direction, as I found by here. And if you wonder what I'm doing by here, I'm saving one of the batteries just in case this doesn't deorbit us fully, but we have to do another pass and we run out of electric charge halfway round and we can't orientate ourselves to point in the right direction. A nice handy tip, so if you have 2 batteries, that's worth doing, because we haven't got any rockets or any solar panels here. I thought they'd explode, and anyway that would probably mean that we go over the weight, because I added an extra fuel tank for the mission on this. And we have re-entered. We are now at subsonic speed. We can open the parachutes. I delayed this because this thing really goes slow because of this really low weight. And Gus Gurman has made it. So if you enjoyed this video, or you thought it was crap, hit the like button. If you dislike this video, you can hit the like button. But if you dislike the video but you want to like it, you can hit the dislike button. And I will prepare to endeavor, or I don't know what to do in my next video. I was thinking I was going to do an SSTO, large SSTO, to Duna, which is a rocket, not an aircraft. And that's why I decided to do this Duna challenge instead, which was a bit late. Anyway, I'm Orbiter. Trust me, I'm an engineer. And see what I do on my next video. Probably not a challenge.